Where is America's most dangerous border? If you said the southern border with Mexico, you'd be wrong. If you said the vast empty line with Canada, you'd also be wrong. Truth be told, the most volatile front line the U.S. has is a frigid 2.5-mile stretch of water off the coast of Alaska. This is the place where a forgotten history of invasion, a modern-day gold rush, and a massive military buildup are all colliding. We're about to reveal why this frozen frontier is a ticking time bomb. It all comes down to one shocking American weakness that Russia has been exploiting for years. Most Americans believe U.S. soil has been untouchable since the War of 1812. But that's not true. In June of 1942, while the world was focused on Europe, Imperial Japan did the unthinkable. They invaded and occupied two American islands, Attu and 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭, in the Aleutian chain of Alaska. For the first time in over a century, a foreign flag was flying on American ground. Let me tell you why this matters today. The fight to reclaim that land became one of the most brutal and forgotten campaigns of the entire war. The Battle of Attu, which lasted for 18 grueling days, was unbelievably vicious. The fighting was often hand-to-hand in freezing mud and thick fog. But here's the kicker. The Japanese soldiers weren't the only enemy. The thing nobody tells you is that the Alaskan environment itself was the deadliest foe. American soldiers from the 7th Infantry Division, who had trained in the sunny deserts of California, were thrown into a nightmare. They were hit with 120-mile-per-hour winds, endless freezing rain, and a fog so thick you couldn't see your own feet. Their gear was completely wrong for the conditions. Their boots rotted away, leading to an epidemic of trench foot. Of the nearly 3,800 American casualties on Attu, more soldiers were taken out of the fight by the environment than by enemy bullets. Over 1,200 men suffered severe cold injuries, and hundreds more were lost to disease and exposure. The land itself was a weapon. After the bloody battle for Attu, a massive force of over 34,000 American and Canadian troops went to invade the second island, 𝐾𝐾𝐨𝐽. They expected another terrible fight, but they found nothing. The Japanese had secretly evacuated weeks earlier under the cover of fog. Yet even on an empty island, the Alaskan front line took its toll. In the disorienting fog, soldiers ended up in firefights with each other. Over 300 casualties were recorded on 𝐾𝐾𝐨𝐽 without a single enemy soldier present. This forgotten war taught a lesson that we are now being forced to remember. Alaska is not a safe, distant outpost. It is vulnerable, and in this part of the world, the climate is an active combatant. But fighting a ghost enemy in a frozen wasteland was just a warm-up. Today, the enemy is real, visible, and separated from an American town by less distance than a New York City bridge. Right in the middle of the Bering Strait, the narrow waterway that separates Asia from North America, sit two small islands. On one side is Little Diomede, which is part of the United States. On the other, just 2.5 miles away, is Big Diomede, which is part of Russia. This tiny gap is closer than Manhattan is to New Jersey. The situation is so strange that the international dateline runs right between them. So Russia's Big Diomede is known as Tomorrow Island, while America's Little Diomede is Yesterday Island. For centuries, indigenous families crossed this gap freely, but in 1948 the Soviet Union turned this crossing into the ice curtain. They forcibly moved the native 𝐾𝐾𝐽 people off Big Diomede and turned the island into a closed military base. Families were separated for decades. Today, the contrast couldn't be more stark. Big Diomede is a fortress, home to Russian border troops, radar stations, and surveillance systems. Little Diomede, on the other hand, is a small American town. It's home to about 80 native Alaskans who live a traditional lifestyle. They have a school and a small store, but no port and no airport. Their only connection to the outside world is a seasonal helicopter. You see, for the American citizens living on Little Diomede, this isn't some far-off political game. It's their daily reality. They can look out their windows and see Russian military personnel just across the water. It creates a unique kind of pressure, knowing that a strategic rival is always watching from just a stone's throw away. This isn't just a line on a map. It's a real, visible front line where a Russian military base stares down a tiny American village. Living next to a military base is one thing, but what's happening in the water between these islands is turning this quiet stare-down into a mad dash for control. And it's all because of something that's changing the entire planet. The reason this frozen corner of the world is suddenly heating up has everything to do with, well, heat. The Arctic is warming up nearly 4 times faster than the rest of the globe. This isn't a problem for the distant future. It's happening right now, and it's physically changing the map of the world. What was once a permanent frozen barrier of ice is now melting away, opening up a new ocean at the top of the world. And here's why that's a huge deal. This great melt is opening up new shipping lanes, especially the Northern Sea Route, which runs along Russia's coast. This new route is like a massive shortcut. It can cut the travel time between Europe and Asia by up to 40% compared to going through the Suez Canal. For global trade, that means saving a huge amount of time and money. The Bering Strait is the gatekeeper to this new ocean highway, and traffic is exploding. In 2010, only about 240 ships made the transit. By 2024, that number had jumped to over 660, and it's expected to increase 5 times over by 2030. We're talking about massive oil tankers, natural gas carriers, and cargo ships all squeezing through this narrow channel. But that's not all. The melting ice is also uncovering a treasure trove of natural resources. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates the Arctic holds 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of its natural gas, plus valuable minerals. It's a modern-day gold rush, and everyone wants a piece of the action. A new ocean highway full of treasure sounds great, right? But here's the kicker. 2 global powers are already playing chess on this new board, and a third unexpected player just showed up to flip the whole table. This new gold rush has turned the Arctic into a geopolitical hotspot. First, you have Russia, which sees the region as its strategic and economic backyard. Over the last decade, they have gone on a massive military building spree. They've reopened dozens of old Soviet-era bases across their Arctic coast and built brand new high-tech facilities. These bases are being armed with advanced radar, air defense systems, and coastal missiles, creating a wall of Russian control. Russian bombers, like the Tu-95 Bear, are constantly flying missions that test U.S. and Canadian air defenses. In just 1 week in August of 2025, NORAD, the joint U.S. and Canadian command, had to scramble jets 4 separate times to intercept Russian aircraft in Alaska's Air Defense Identification Zone. But Russia isn't the only one making moves. China has declared itself a near-Arctic state and is pushing its own agenda with something called the Polar Silk Road. They are investing billions in Russian energy projects and are building up their own fleet of ice-breaking ships. And many people are crazy about this next part. They aren't just sending research vessels. Chinese and Russian warships are now conducting joint naval patrols together, sometimes circling the entire nation of Japan and operating near the Aleutian Islands. This isn't just about economics anymore. It's about projecting military power. Meanwhile, Canada, America's silent partner in defending the continent, is feeling the strain. They help with NORAD intercepts, but their own icebreaker fleet is aging and their infrastructure in the north is limited. With Russia and China teaming up and probing U.S. defenses daily, you'd think America would have an iron grip on its own backyard. But the thing nobody tells you is that the U.S. is missing one critical piece of equipment, and it's a gap so huge it makes the entire front line vulnerable. Here is the truth of the situation. For all the talk of military power, the United States has a massive, glaring weakness in the Arctic. It all comes down to one type of ship, the icebreaker. An icebreaker is the key to operating in this part of the world. It's the only way to maintain a year-round presence, conduct search and rescue, or respond to a crisis in ice-choked waters. And here is where it gets really concerning. Russia has a fleet of over 40 icebreakers. This includes the world's only fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers which can smash through the thickest ice all year long. And how many does the United States have? 2. And only one of them is a heavy icebreaker, the Polar Star, which is already decades old and on its last legs. This isn't just a small difference. It's a massive capability gap. It means that for much of the year, Russia can go places and do things in the Arctic that the United States simply cannot. This problem is made worse by a lack of infrastructure. Russia has a network of deep-water ports all along its Arctic coast to support its fleet. The U.S. has 0. America just recently approved the construction of its first strategic deep-water port in the Arctic at Nome, Alaska, but it won't be ready until 2029 at the earliest. To make matters even more unstable, Russia has never even officially ratified the 1990 Maritime Border Agreement with the U.S., leaving the legal status of the border unsettled. So let's put it all together. We have a front line that was the site of a brutal, forgotten war. We have a new gold rush for shipping lanes and resources caused by a melting planet. We have a 3-way standoff between the U.S., Russia, and China. And we have a massive American weakness that leaves the nation unable to patrol its own Arctic frontier effectively. This isn't a distant problem for the future. History didn't forget Alaska's war, we did. And in this new great game, the Arctic may not give us a second chance. Will America's Arctic weakness spark the next great conflict? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives.